To give us an assessment of the 2019 polls, we are now joined by constitutional law professor Tony Lavinia from the University of the Philippines. Good morning, sir. Thank you for being here.
Good morning, Ria.
Okay, it's been just a couple of hours since polling precincts closed, and we're seeing a partial and unofficial tally of votes. What's your assessment so far of these midterm polls?
Well, clearly, in terms of the result, it's a big day for the Duterte administration. I mean, the right headline there is not 12-0, right? That's actually a mistake. It's 9-3-0 because you have three independents winning. The polls itself, in terms of it was conducted, disappointing in my view. Lots of problems. The 7-8 hours yesterday when we didn't have any idea of the win because of some glitch, I thought was bringing us over the edge, and it could give people, if this were much closer, people would be angry. And there are people saying now that they were cheated, and I don't. There's nothing there There's nothing to prove that and to show that, so I wouldn't echo that allegation. But the outcomes, it seems to me, is quite clear. But I don't consider this a catastrophe for democracy, a catastrophe for the country. I think there are quite good lessons to learn here and moving forward. Certainly, I don't know if Bam Aquino can still catch up, so at least there'll be at least one opposition that wins. But in terms of the make of the Senate, we really just lost two opposition voices there. That's Senator Trillanes, who's leaving on an expired term, and Senator Bam Aquino. And we gained one independent in the case of Senator Lapid, right? So actually the Senate is more Duterte followers, Duterte supporters, but also a big middle of independents. And very, very big mistake to think that those independents will automatically be with Duterte on all issues, like especially charter change, which needs 18 votes, right? So let's not catastrophize on that. In terms of the Senate, the votes are still there to do the right thing, but we have to work hard. And we have to be, the opposition, those of us who are in human rights, democracy, we have to have a broader, we have to have a strategy that brings in a broader alliance. Now, I think that, Ocho Derecho, and I admire the volunteers, I admire the candidates, they would have been much better if they aligned with Grace Poe and Nancy Binay and Nery Colmenares of the left. I mean, if you're the broader, from the very beginning, a list of 12 versus 12.
So you're saying that would have potentially been
much,
a more
much
powerful
better. You might have a result
coalition
that's more 4-7-5 or 8-4. It would still be the administration. You have to understand, Ria, that in our system, the midterms is not a referendum on the administration unless the opposition chooses it to be. The administration, there's only one instance when the administration lost. That's when 2007, because former President Arroyo was very unpopular. Hello, Garcia, the perception that he cheated in 2004. Parang bumawi yung mga tao, di ba, naglaya ka, babawi kami sa'yo. But always the administration wins. The first election after EDSA, 20-2. No? I mean, only two opposition won. So
why is that the case in this country?
Because of the resources. You have to understand that the president comes in cold, usually, not necessarily have all the alliances that he has. In 3 years, he consolidates all of that. And this time, in fact, I would have thought that they could even do better because they really have. I mean, I think President Duterte has consolidated 99.9% of the political elite. I mean, and so that's really the story of this. It follows the usual pattern. It is not an aberration, which tells you the strategy, right? I mean, the strategy of making this a referendum about President Duterte was maybe problematic. I mean, that maybe the better strategy was what do you stand for, and a broader one. I always say that, a broader one.
I mean, I can understand why candidates would want to align themselves with the president. As you said, you know, the administration would have all the resources. But from the voters' point of view, why do they tend to favor those allied with the current administration?
Well, because right now because you have a popular president, right? So that's very important. I mean, the one thing that could have diminished its popularity, the inflation, will improve over the last 6 months, both because of aggressive action by the government, but also because of oil prices. I mean, the decline of oil prices. So that doesn't work in favor of the opposition. The resources of the administration are enormous. I mean, and I know that in this particular case, you have a president and a president's political team that's very ruthless in terms of those resources. I mean, I think affecting the ability of the opposition to also raise funds. In the past, I know that businessmen would give to everyone. You know,
is that still the practice?
I can't reveal sources on this, but many have said that this time around, businessmen chose to give only more to administration. If they gave to opposition, very small amounts of money. Well, because of fear, because of a clear message from the administration that this administration has from day one has been very strong on business, that we don't want you to object. We don't want you to stand against us on anything.
So if you have a climate where businessmen have those fears, you have a Senate where the president has tremendous influence because he's got his people in there. Where do we find checks and balances now?
Well, first the Senate, because as I said, you have a whole range of independents there that you can work on unless you give up on them. That's carelessness, that's laziness, and that's being judgmental. Which is a very big issue here when people are being judgmental and they say, like for example, Brispo should have topped the polls, but there's people very judgmental. She's not opposition, she's not with us, and in fact campaigned against her. It's not just not voting for, but campaigned against her, right? That is so shallow, that kind of thinking, but it's a given. So my view is the main lesson here is you have to have a broader alliance. Now, I mean, one list. When I did a lot of non-partisan political education, which was I have to present everyone and every side. So I have the very clear 2 administration slates, but more or less common, right? With 2 or 3 that are not in both. And then there were 4 slates that of the opposition, or that's not administration. You had Ocho Derecho, you had a Labor Win coalition, you have the People's Choice movement, you have the Makabayan list, right? So, of course, people will get confused. Who's the real opposition here, right? I mean, those 4 groups should have gotten together and had 12 names, right? Not 8, not 7, not 5. 12 names. I mean, people were even telling me that Ocho Derecho favored actually Sani Angara the most because Sani Angara is number 8. Ocho Derecho was not in the list of options for you to vote on, but a lot of time and money, maybe not so much money, but energy was spent on that. By the way, can I talk about the local too? Because
yes, that's where I wanted to go.
There's a lot of hope there in the local.
Yeah, so of course the big news being that it looks like the sort of end of the road for the Estrada dynasty. You have them losing in San Juan with the win of now Mayor-elect Zam Zamora, and then of course Isko Moreno losing, winning.
Possible loss of the 2 Estrada
in the Senate. Okay, so what does this mean, and what does it say about how voters are thinking?
If you're cynical, you say, well, we can defeat a dynasty after 50 years, or a dynasty's lifetime is 50 years. No, I think it's more also the quality of the candidates and now the quality of their opponents is very important in getting them to where they end up with, right? So I'm not gonna say it's over for them completely. I mean, because you do have um, Senator JV could still make it to the Senate. I mean, I'm not gonna say that the last two slots is concluded already, even
Right.
with 93, 94
But
slots.
that also
Passing is very important. That's
Okay,
the real thing.
let's talk about that.
Vico Soto, proudly my student, proudly someone who I've worked with when he joined Ateneo School of Government in our democracy team there, is the real thing. Progressive in all issues, uh, totally committed to good governance, to transparency, to freedom of information, to not being corrupt. I mean, very good politician. If you know Vico, magaan siya, and that's why he won. I mean,
And it helps that he looks like a movie star himself.
oh, well, of course, that helps.
Right,
but
yeah.
but you know, and there are lots of others who are movies are looking that have not won.
Yeah.
I just
Just an added bonus for him.
understand that, but that's
Yeah.
an added bonus. But shoestring budget, that's very important. Shoestring budget, and still won against a very powerful dynasty who did everything. You know, I mean, to stop him. I mean, President Duterte himself had to get involved. You know, I mean, on the last day because it was just so unfair what the dynasty was doing. You know, to try to stop Vico. So that's good news.
Okay, I wanna talk
It's not
also-
about Vico. It's about you can win. You
Right.
can win when you're good, but you have to be good at the politics. No?
Now, I want to talk about the Be Nice. Kid Peña poised to win over former Vice President Judge Marbinay for that congressional seat. Former VP Jojo Binay not used to losing on the local level. Again, what does this mean?
I actually don't. I was surprised. That for me was a big surprise. That wasn't in the horizon of a lot of analysts' mind. It seems like, you know. I don't know if the fight between the Binay siblings affected that. That could be the case. Of course, Kid Penny has been building up his support through the years,
Yes.
including when he was vice mayor. So that's another thing. Resilience is important in politics. So if Bam Aquino really doesn't make it, the only message I would have for him is be resilient. And you know, there are many comebacks in politics.
That is true.
It changes very fast. Bam was is a very good senator, very good politician as well. It's just unfortunate that he was faced with this onslaught of fake news, of direct attacks. So that's the same with Mar Rojas, no?
All right. Okay, Professor, thank you so much for your time. We do appreciate it. UP Constitutional Law Professor Tony Lavinia.